So this one here, I think this is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but this might be less than 9 for us, yes? No, I know, but is it supposed to be 9?
No, we had 9 last time.
We had 9, I know, but the one before that, I think,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's fine. All right. So just a little recall on photosynthesis. This happens, of course, in plants only. Photosynthesis is the process in which carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil in the presence of light produce glucose and oxygen. Glucose is then used as an energy source. Okay, so you can copy that down. And it occurs in the chloroplast. And we're going to have the word equation there, which is water and carbon dioxide. Chlorophyll and light gives me glucose and oxygen. And then there is the balanced chemical equation for that as well. Okay, so just copy down those two things. I'll just pause it here right away. Next, respiration. There we go. Respiration is the reverse of photosynthesis. Glucose reacts with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water and energy, and that can be used by the cell. It occurs in the mitochondria in the plant and animal cells, and we're going to use glucose and oxygen, like I said, to give me 6 carbon dioxide, 6 waters, and some energy as well. Okay. Okay, so gas exchange in plants, and I'll let you copy that as well, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. So again, we talked a little bit about, multicellular organisms, right? Same thing with plants. They have, leaves, for example, are going to not have the same type of cells that, for example, a stem would have. Okay, stems would probably have more of a cell wall, that cellulose fibrous material. In leaves, of course, we want, for example, lots of stomata on the bottom of the cell, right? Guard cells. They're going to have that waxy cuticle, so they're specialized, right? The leaf has specialized cells to maximize the ability to exchange gases that are essential for photosynthesis and respiration. By the way, where are these specialized cells located? Yeah. Bottom of the leaf, yes. Okay. The stomata regulate the movement of gases by opening or closing to let gases in or out. The direction of the movement will depend on the concentration gradient. So it follows the concentration gradient, and of course it would be passive in that case. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what guard cells look like, and then the stomata, or the opening there, basically. All right. In the case of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide enters the stomata and circulates in the spaces between the spongy and the palisade tissue cells. The carbon dioxide diffuses down its concentration gradient into the cells, and the oxygen that is produced then passes out of the cells and eventually out through the stomata. What about woody plants? In woody plants, layers of dead cells, the bark, and waxy substances prevent direct exchange between the external environment and living cells below the wood. Lens-shaped openings called lenticels occur in the bark that allow air in and out. Okay. I don't think we really need to worry about this too much, but it's just a little extra piece of information for you there. Okay. All right. Good. Regulation of the stomata. So how do we decide how much that opens or how much that closes, that opening, that gas opening? Guard cells function to open or close the stomata. Okay. So the guard cells kind of regulate how big the stomata is. The amount of water in the guard cells causes the stomata to open or close. And when water moves into the guard cells, the vacuole swells, and the resulting pressure, or what we call turgor pressure, causes the guard cells to change shape and open the stomata. When the water vapor passes out through the stomata in a process called transpiration, the amount of water in the guard cell decreases. As a result, the cells deflate and change shape, so the stomata close. And again, in this case here, okay, guard cells probably are a special type of cell, right? Again, probably would have maybe a central vacuole, large, maybe even a larger central vacuole. Maybe perhaps they even have more than one central vacuole in that case. Their job is basically to take in water, yes, and expand. When they expand, they open. Okay, they kind of, I'll show you a little analogy here, but and when the water transpires out, basically, which is, think of it as evaporation kind of thing, right? When water leaves the guard cells, then they close. Okay, kind of looks like balloons, right? If you kind of blow up the balloons, they'll do this, right? If they're kind of curved a bit, and if you let the balloon air out, they kind of close. Yes. Okay, so that kind of deal there. All right. We'll come back to that, I think, in a little bit here, but obviously, well, yeah. Well, we'll just skip that for now, I think, but we'll talk about that at the end. Transport of water in plants. So, how does that happen? First of all, yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about how water is transported in plants, and that, of course, is going to tie into these guard cells as well eventually here. So I guess we'll start with this part here first. Okay. So in this case here, okay, there's a lot of things up there, but we'll talk about this. Let's just worry about the first part here. First of all, dissolved minerals are present in the cells of the root, and as a result of active transport resulting in a higher solute concentration inside the root cell. Okay. As a result, water is drawn into the cells through osmosis, is what that should say there. Is that what you guys have to? Yeah. As a result, water is drawn into the cell through osmosis, and I'll explain this picture here, so just be patient for a second here. Okay. And we'll take, like I said, take a little break here. Okay, so the first part that we have to understand here is we're talking about the root cells. Okay, how do we get water and minerals into the roots to transport up to the entire part of the tree, the leaves especially? Okay, so the first thing that you have to know is this. Okay, dissolved minerals are present in the cells of the root as a result of active transport. So active transport resulting in a higher solute concentration inside the root cells. So we need to get minerals, more and more minerals, into the root cells. Okay? So we have to pump against that because obviously in the roots we would have a lot of minerals probably already there. We want to get more minerals in there. Okay? So this is kind of like the solute, the solids. Okay? So it could be potassium from the ground, or calcium, or whatever, okay, it needs. So we need to pump that into the cell. We need to go against the concentration gradient. We already have a high concentration of minerals in the root cell. We want to get more in. So we're pumping against that. So that's the first thing you have to understand, is that the minerals get in through active transport against the concentration gradient. Okay? I would maybe make sure you write that down somewhere so that you know. Active transport to bring active transport to bring minerals in against the concentration gradient. Okay. Active transport to bring minerals in against the concentration gradient. And that's going to happen against the concentration gradient. Okay. So the minerals are getting in through active transport. The water goes through osmosis. Okay. So it goes from a high to a low. It is passive transport. Okay, there's no energy for that. So the water is going to go into the cell through passive transport, no energy required. Okay, and it's osmosis. Okay, water passes freely. So we always want to get more water into the cell, obviously, so that we can, so plants can live, obviously. But we want to get more water into the cell, and of course we're going to have a higher concentration outside. Okay, that's guaranteed. There's going to be more water in the soil than there is in the root cells, or at least let's hope so, right? So they're going to pump that water is going to diffuse freely across the membrane and go into the cell. Okay. So the two parts you need to have here is active transport for the minerals, osmosis for the water. Okay. They both go into the cell. Okay. And then we'll talk about what happens after that. Okay. Now, as far as the diagram goes, it really doesn't matter how you want to draw that, but I want you to understand that minerals, okay, there's a lot of minerals inside of here already, inside the cell, and we're trying to get more minerals in. Okay, so you can draw whatever you need for that. So in this case, I put some dots down, basically to show that there's a lot of minerals on the inside of the cell, and I want to get even more minerals inside. So that is, of course, active transport. Okay, water is kind of the opposite. There's going to be a lot of water on the outside, and I want to get it to the inside. Okay, so water, again, no energy is required. Passive transport is allowed to freely diffuse across the membrane. Okay. As water is drawn into the roots, it creates pressure that forces the water up the xylem towards the leaves where there is a lower pressure. So it goes kind of from a high pressure to a low pressure system. Okay, so water's coming in through the bottom here in the roots. Okay, that creates a bunch of pressure down there, and it's going to start to force water up the stem, okay, or the tree trunk, or whatever the case might be. Okay, is that good? Okay, so it creates something called turgor pressure. Turgor pressure. So again, a lot of water coming in, a lot of minerals coming in. Vacuoles will swell, okay, and as a result, that's going to start pushing water up, okay, up this tree trunk here. All right. So that's the first part of what's happening in the movement of water from basically the roots to the leaves. Okay, root pressure, active transport for the minerals, diffusion, or osmosis through for the water. Okay, that's the first part. Then cohesion, and we're going to talk about something else coming together. But water travels from the roots to the leaves. But how? Root pressure only accounts for a couple of meters. So basically, if we were looking at a tree, for example, I mean, this is all relative. If we're looking at a small plant, it wouldn't be this much, but you can imagine a tree. It would maybe push water up this far from the ground here to maybe there, okay, in a fairly large tree, probably. Then that's as far as it can go, okay, with this root pressure. That's the pressure that pushes that water up, and the minerals, of course. Then the rest of it is water molecules are attracted to other water molecules due to the polar nature of water, and we call this cohesion. So cohesion, basically, we talked a little bit about hydrogen bonding in the past, I think. This water molecule is polar. That pulls on this water molecule, which pulls on this one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they help pull those water molecules up. Okay. The slightly positive end of water is attracted to the slightly slightly negative end of another water molecule, okay, and that helps pull on them. So that's cohesion. And with that, okay, is also something called adhesion. Okay, adhesion is because of their polar nature. Water molecules are also attracted to molecules of other substances, and this allows them to pull themselves up. Okay, also in the xylem, of course. For example, if you ever put paper towel in water, yes. And you can see how it kind of starts to go up and up and up, right? Kind of the same idea here, okay? So cohesion and adhesion are this middle parts of this. So that will take care of the rest, getting it up to the leaves. And then there's something in the leaves that kind of helps this as well, okay? But water traveling up a paper towel is an example of that. Again, cohesion, adhesion, they link to each other. So one water is connected to another water, and they're connected to the sides of the xylem as well. So again, one pulls on another, right? This one pulls, this one pulls, this one pulls, and they're attracted to the sides of the xylem as well. Okay, so they're helping pull. It kind of works as a siphon. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that coming up here. Okay, good. Okay, and so that's the middle part. And then the last part is something called transpiration. Okay. And transpiration is when water vapor exits through the stomata as it evaporates. Okay. Water can also exit through lenticels. The water that is lost must be replaced, so water is drawn up through the xylem. Cohesion and adhesion help this process, and the pulling of the water up the xylem is called the transpirational pull. Make sure you know that. Transpirational pull. And at higher temperatures results in more transpiration, and we'll talk about that. And the part that we missed here too, we'll talk about eventually.